and his flying machine have managed some remarkable achievements in the last 80 or so years, from that first 12-second flight to shrinking the globe in a matter of hours. On the heels of such an accomplishment, Vancouver celebrates her 100th birthday and pays tribute to the themes of transportation and communications. And to mark the event, we are hosting a visitor that boasts the most advanced aero technology to date, the Concorde.
Concorde is really two aeroplanes in one. Firstly, when it's flying subsonically, it has very different characteristics in terms of its the attitude in which it flies and the way it handles. It's a totally different animal. And of course, supersonically, well, it's a unique animal in its own right. So there are two aeroplanes rolled into one, are different from other subsonics when subsonic, and very different from anything else in the world, of course, when it's above the speed of sound.
The crew are doing their final checks, ready for departure. We've been cleared for takeoff, and so departure is imminent. I would suggest you all take a deep breath before we begin.
Why do you think there was a concept for a supersonic transport?
A natural progression of events. It became possible for high-speed flight to be developed after the end of the war, really almost during the war, and the question of the first jet airliner, the Comet 1, which by the way I flew for a couple of years myself again in the year 1952 to 54, even at that time it was very clear that engine thrust was going to be available, which would not only give performance like for the Harrier, for the AV-8B, vertical takeoff, it will give the possibility of getting aeroplanes off the ground with the sort of weight and load that would enable them, and fuel, which enable them to go long distances at high speed. And so it became possible to think of getting these very, very fast aeroplanes into the air in terms of power. Aerodynamically is another matter. That was being developed at the same time, and the aerodynamicists had developed all sorts of ways of conquering the drag.
Captain Walpole controlling the speed, 240 miles per hour. Over the edge of the field now, down to 300 feet, lining up, and away we go.
What kind of people fly the Concorde on a regular basis?
Well, mainly chief executives, presidents of corporations. They would account for the 82% of the traffic. The balance of the traffic would then come from your show business types, from your thrill-of-a-lifetime type flyers who, once in their life, they're going to do it. And that's basically the breakdown of the business.
I think for me, this is the best part of my career. The thrill and the joy of flying on a very special aircraft like this is tremendous. It's not like coming to work, it's having fun as well as coming to work. You give so many other people so much pleasure.
If I lived in New York and I had to commute London and or Paris on the Concorde fleet, whether I'd want to spend 6 hours in a first-class cabin or 3 hours and 40 or 50 minutes in the Concorde, my feelings are very ambivalent about that. I choose to do a lot of work when I'm flying. You have no opportunity in the Concorde to get up, move around, but then you don't need that opportunity. The flight is all over in 3 hours and a half.
Concorde is a very, very expensive animal to maintain. It needs a lot of attention, for which I make no apology. It has to be cosseted and coveted by the maintenance engineers. Its spare parts are enormously expensive, and we spare no cost at all in maintaining that aeroplane to the highest standards and putting on board the ultimate in food, in wine, the cabin service, the whole bit. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, cost is not part of the equation when it comes to looking after Concorde and the passengers we carry on it.
On a note of the future, or looking into the future, can you see a development of either the Concorde or a prototype or a successor?
There is obviously going to be a successor to Concorde, a son of or a daughter of Concorde. If you recall the history of Concorde, it was developed by British Aerospace and Aerospace. Aerospace for the British government, Aerospace for Air France. So there may be, again, a coming together of the two countries to develop the next generation of Concorde, which incidentally, even if it went off the drawing boards today, would not surface until the 21st century anyway.
Concorde will remain in service for another 15 years. It'll fly into the next century. The structural testing of the aeroplane has suggested that it will be totally acceptable in structural integrity terms beyond the year 2000. Now, it is my firm view that there will be a successor to Concorde. Now,
People that I've spoken to that have flown Concorde, and there are some occasions when something goes wrong in New York and they are upgraded from first class on whatever airline they're flying with to Concorde, they're ecstatic about it. They think it's absolutely marvelous. They think it's wonderful. But I'm a pretty tired and weary traveler, so I perhaps have a different point of view than they do. But the overwhelming response of those people that fly Concorde is, wow.
The Concorde isn't the answer for the budget-conscious traveler like most of us are. This aircraft is expensive, reserved for dukes and duchesses, the sultans of government, business, industry, and the arts, or anyone who can afford the extravagant price it takes to fuel it. Don't look for seat-saver discounts on this flight. It's just not in that league. But you know, on the other hand, you have to marvel at what can be done when people put their minds together to fulfill the dream of man and his magnificent flying machine.
It's amazing how occasionally man, with a complicated device like a big piece of metal, which is all Concorde is, manages, and solving all sorts of technical problems, manage to come up with something looking really nice. Now, Concorde is such a nice looking thing, and it moves one to such enthusiasm, and it isn't really anything more than that.